that can go one way or another, and identify those folks. You can look at their voting records, and they're kind of, they're not overly partisan usually, and they vote some ways on one thing, but then something that, on another, and they're not just all, all one way or all the other way. And you want to identify those folks and take the opportunity to cultivate them. Invite them to your events. Give them a role to play. Let them give a curtain speech. Let them, if you win an award, let them, give them an opportunity to talk about the award in front of an audience. And if they're not already art supporters, introduce them as a new art supporter, a new friend to the arts. And they will see the value when they see a room full of people. If they're not the people over here that are totally opposed to you, they will see the value. They will begin to get it. And sooner or later, you'll find the argument or you'll find the relationship that will bring them in. And that's a wonderful thing to have. I would say that when I've been in meetings with elected officials who I want to meet with, but I know are not going to support public funding for the arts, I try and give them something that they can say yes on. So for example, in Washington, D.C., being from Arizona, I would meet with people that were extremely, extremely conservative, that had never voted for funding for the arts and would never vote for funding for the arts. But I knew that they liked tax credits, and I knew they got that. So I talked to them about the artist tax deduction bill. So that is a bill that would allow artists to take the fair market value of their work rather than just the cost of the canvas and the paints and whatever, which is what the current rule is. They get treated with parity, and that's the way we talk about it. And that's something that they could get, that's something they could buy into, and that's something where I didn't have to feel like I just went in there and banged my head against a wall. So if you can find something that they can support and some common ground that you have, you've accomplished something. One of the last things I will say is that it can be very discouraging sometimes, and what you want to do is not give up your enthusiasm. What I do as somebody who's a professional arts advocate is make sure that I get out of my office or get out of political settings and get close to the thing that I'm advocating for. So going to an event or going to an art class with kids or getting close to that experience, then I remember what I'm doing it for and why it matters. And, I am a true believer. And somebody who's good at marketing or good at, public relations or a good lobbyist or whatever has a huge enthusiasm for what they're there for. They believe in it. And that belief and that enthusiasm translates. And it can become infectious. And you want to make sure that you don't lose that. You don't get discouraged when the political process is knocking you down, when there's a bad bill or a bad ordinance or the arts are getting cut. You want to remember what you're there for, not get too wrapped up in the political games, and keep your chin up and share that enthusiasm. I put out in the lobby some strategies for communicating with elected officials. I'm not going to read those to you, but this was a quote that was solicited by our organization before he was a senator, and I think that it's inspirational. And the part that I really get here is when he says the emails that are actually written. So there's a lot of e-advocacy going on out there, and that's great. It's wonderful. It makes it so much easier for us to take action on an issue. And we can do it like that. Very often there's talking points that you can click on. You can do it like that. And that matters. And if you only have a couple minutes, that's very valuable. That's great. But if you have the time, it's great if you can put in a little bit more effort and make it personal. Put the email in your own words. Write a different subject line, include a personal example, write a letter. If the bill's not coming up right away, if you have some time, write a letter. Nobody writes letters anymore. It's hugely impactful. Make a phone call, have an actual conversation with another human being, or have a meeting. Make it as personal as you possibly can, and the more personal it is, the more impactful it's going to be. And I was having a conversation with Ra earlier, and he was telling me that, as someone who had worked in Jan Schakowsky's office for 6 years, and a letter or a phone call is something that you have to respond to. You're not just going to go or throw the letter in the trash, but an email is so easy to just click off and delete and ignore. And this is why that's so important. And I'm not saying that email isn't good. It's better than nothing, but even better than that is getting as personal as you possibly can. So, just to let you know, so the Illinois Arts Alliance, what are we trying to accomplish this year? And we have short-term goals and long-term goals, and kind of a greater goal in general, which, as I mentioned, is to make sure that the arts can flourish in the state of Illinois, and that there's infrastructure and support and funding and policy that makes those things happen to create an environment in which the arts can flourish. We also have some short-term goals that we are trying to get accomplished this session. 3 basic goals. One is to increase the public funding of the Illinois Arts Council, which, as you know, is the regranting organization for arts organizations and also provides services. And that's to get that funding up to $2 per person per year, which we think is a nice little soundbite, or $24 million. It's currently at just over about 20.6. The other thing is to increase that investment in that program that I was talking about earlier from $4 million to $7 million in the next financial year. So right now there's funding it started with planning grants to go directly to school districts so they could make plans on how they could incorporate the arts in their curriculum, so it wouldn't be a one-time gift of money that would be used once and go away. It was to make plans. Then for schools that could demonstrate that they had plans in place, whether through doing this process or on their own, it was more money, up to $100,000 to implement those plans. And now we're looking for some more funding to reach more school districts. We're reaching just over 60 right now in the state, and we're trying to reach even more school districts, and also do some technical assistance to reach out to the school districts that don't even begin to know how to do a strategic planning process or how to apply for a grant, so we can reach the people that need it the very most. And finally, we have something that maybe, again, if I was in a meeting with someone I knew wasn't going to fund the arts, it's a non-appropriation issue, not asking for money. And that's to get arts education added to the state district report cards. Right now, when parents are making a decision on where to send their kids to school, decision on where to move to, they're getting all kinds of information on what the test scores are, but there's not any information on what's available in terms of arts education. This is an ambitious goal for us, but something that we think that we can get done. And if we don't get it done this year, we're going to go for it again next year, and we're going to go for it until we get it done. And if we get it done now, we'll be the very first state in the country to do it. How great would that be? These are some of the issues that we worked with Americans for the Arts on at the national level. So the Artist Museum Partnership Act, which is that artist tax deduction bill, that has a really good chance this year. And we have some great co-sponsors, including Senator Durbin from Illinois, that have signed on to that bill and that are supporting it. Funding for the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for Humanities, Arts and Education, Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Obviously, we don't go into the meetings with this laundry list of things. We go into the meetings knowing what our priorities are, listening or already knowing what that elected official's issues are, and asking for those 1 to 3 things that we think we're most